Welcome. I'm here with Leslie Bailey, who is the founder and CEO of Indy Maven, which is, I'll let her describe it. Today, it's a digital community, although she had a physical community in the form of a co-working space it was called Indy Maven, right? Or no,
Maven.
it's called Maven Space. Yeah. And I met Leslie. Leslie, I think you must have been a podcast listener and you reached out and I got to know her business pretty well. And I was just saying to Leslie, Leslie, you had a lot of like really unique aspects to your business that I think are maybe like somewhat special to your package of what you bring to the table. Like, not necessarily everybody could replicate it, but I love what you were doing with your business. And there were certain aspects of the model that you wanted to shift and you were going to move into a different location in order to do that. But well, so we'll get into that, what sort of your secret sauce was that you were doing in this space and with your community. But I'd love to hear your background, what you were doing with your kind of digital, maybe a little bit hybrid. You were doing some things in person. Like, what was your background? What was the community you had started? And why did you want a physical space and sort of, talk about that journey?
Sure. Well, my background was journalism. So I was a columnist for the Indianapolis Star, and then I worked at Indianapolis Monthly as a lifestyle editor. So was in the journalism field and was remaining in that. So I started what I thought would be a media publication, Indy Maven, in October of 2019. So there was never going to be a membership. It was never supposed to be a community. It was a media company, a newsletter that would have in-person events.
Okay.
And right before launching, I started getting all these people asking me how they could join this community. And I was like, oh, that's not what this is.
Yeah.
And then after so many times you get asked something, you're like, well, I guess it is now. So kind of threw up a membership, like really inexpensive. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like $50 for the year or something. And this was kind of right, at least in my world, when I was really starting to see memberships take off. And so I kind of did this deep dive into membership communities. So we paired the media content, did really well with an exciting launch and had a big following. And then, of course, 5 months later, it's COVID. So in a lot of ways, though, we had a completely digital product. Of course, we were going to have in-person events, but we just pivoted those to being digital, as so many people did, or virtual. But then during, I think, that first year of COVID, I had heard Rachel Rogers, who has a podcast and is an author.
I totally listen to Rachel sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So she had this attorney on, and they were talking about how the highest number of trademarks ever were filed that year by women, and that women were staying in the trademark system longer. And I was like, oh, well, I have this digital publication that's for women, and we're going to start doing events again when the world opens up. And then just had this this was before we were talking about Great Resignation, but had this moment of like, oh, women are the world is going to be different at the end of this. Women are not necessarily, they're not going to stay in the workforce, or maybe they're going to finally do that side hustle, or they're going to be doing multiple things. Like the workplace, as we know, obviously was going to shift, did shift. And I had seen, of course, The Wing, and I had seen Chief launch, right? So all the
That's right.
groups for women. And now, like with Chief, the clubhouses were secondary. So the physical location was kind of secondary to the community. And of course, we saw the issues with The Wing. But because it was COVID and I was getting into all this, like the online learning space, I was getting in rooms, quote unquote, with like some women that were early investors in The Wing. So I got to hear what went right, what went wrong, and like how could I adapt and sort of bring this Hoosier hospitality Indiana version, right? And so launched Maven Space as a 15,000 square foot co-working space in May of whatever that year that was, 2022, I think.
Wild. Okay. So, and it was downtown.
Yes, it was downtown Indianapolis. And I started because I kept telling people on Zoom calls that I had this idea. And I was sharing an office with my husband. And finally, one day he turned around and was like, do you actually know like how to do that? I was like, well, no. Like, let me get you in touch with someone. If you've told enough people about this now, you should probably like investigate. And so he put me in touch with a woman, Jenna Barnett, who was in commercial real estate and was incredible. And it was the first space she showed me. And I had this crazy checklist of like, I want it to be in an old building, but I don't want it to feel old. I want there to be a cafe. I want there to be a gym. I want there to be natural light. I remember when I told you this when we very first met, and it was everything on my list. I just like manifested this space. And so a lot of the business model was just because it was a 2.5-year lease. So I didn't feel like, committed in this
Yeah.
really long-term thing. I could test it out.
And it was a really good lease.
And it was a good lease. It was a sublease. And then, just tailored a lot of the physical space because that's the building I was not given, but, the building
Yep.
found. And so I think that's where a lot of those components you mentioned earlier came through and kind of working with what I had. But I had worked in hospitality and kind of was just able to bring all of these different backgrounds of marketing and hospitality and journalism all to this physical space.
Yeah. Okay. But so interesting because I still feel like you ran this business as if you'd done a bunch of these things before, which you had not. I mean, not like on your own as a business, owner. You'd not owned a business before. So, and it was a little fire ready aim because you took
Yeah.
the space, which was 15,000 feet of no offices. I can still remember I
Oh,
was like, oh God.
and we
Okay.
met after I had signed the lease to be
Right, for sure. But favorable lease terms, short term, and you took over a space that came with a bunch of equipment for the event. So it's a substantial event space.
Yes.
So I feel like you sort of like accidentally dropped into this model that you did a lot of things to make it work that I think would have then transferred extremely well into the space that you designed that you didn't end up moving into. But so your event space was 5,000 square feet. Is that right? Ish?
Yeah,
It's
sounds right.
big.
Yeah, it was like a
Yeah,
200-person event space,
right.
stadium seating at the back and projectors and podium, all the things. I subleased from Salesforce. So if anyone knows that little company, I got a pretty great deal with getting all of the FF&E included in the lease.
Oh, that's right. All of it. So furniture and equipment. So it was like you walked in, the gym was fit out, you had furniture. So you had
There were
no
like iPads laying around.
crazy.
Yeah.
And all the equipment in the event space, which would have cost a pretty penny to if
Oh,
you had done that yourself. I mean, I, st- yes, I still think, really interesting opportunity. And so I mean, you did some significant event revenue. I mean, that was really, kind of driving the business, partly because it had to. I don't know how it fit into sort of your vision because your space was mostly female focused,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
To
Yes.
support this
And then to
community
your
you'd
point.
built that,
Yeah,
and all the trends you're talking about. But you're like,
exactly.
well, we have a big event space and we need revenue. So, I mean, you were a great example. Event space is like really adjacent. It's a very different business model than co-working.
Yeah.
But there, yeah, I don't even know. I mean, there's not a lot of overlap, and yet people will do it, and it is a great way to generate revenue if you have the right space for it. And yours was like really purpose built as an event space.
Yeah, and in our case, they really did overlap a lot. Like people would come into this space for an event and then become members,
Yeah.
and it was they were funnels for each other, and then the members would choose that location because they would get a discount to host the space. So I think it was a good little ecosystem. And then Karen, who is the director of the space, also had a hospitality background and an events background and food and beverage. So we ended up leaning, I think, even heavier than we would have had she been somebody else or
Yeah.
had a different background, but it made it easy. I don't want to say it was easy, but it made
Yeah.
it easier with her expertise to launch that part of the business.
Can you describe the food and beverage offering?
So there was a full cafe in event space. And so it had, the under counter refrigerators and the sinks and microwaves. So we did a full cafe menu that had breakfast and lunch and then kind of snacks. But we also were able to get a catering hall liquor license. So we were also had some sales from alcohol. a three-way catering license. So we had liquor as well, which then obviously made it a more desirable event venue because that's a big barrier. It did well, honestly. At first, we started off with it's two women who were running like a catering business that were running it, I think like the first year. They decided to just dissolve their partnership in that business. And so we were left like, oh no, what are we going to do? And Karen was like, let's do it ourselves. So we did it in-house for the whole rest of the time up until when I thought we were going to move locations and did
Yep.
not.
So you served as a catering arm for the event business, but you also like your members could come in and order. Like, what's an example of if I came in, what could I order?
Well, we had a very popular cheese, like cauliflower soup. I don't know.
Mhm.
Paninis, like, were very popular. A lot of salads. Like, Karen made delicious food, made a delicious menu. And we had a woman, Lily, who worked in the cafe, but we would also serve the building. So it was a 4-story building. And
Right.
so other businesses would come as well. And it was members only. It wasn't open to the public. Someone couldn't just walk off the street, but we did get away, I can say in hindsight now, serving the building as well.
Totally, which I thought was so creative. But you also, I mean, it's so interesting to me. You started, I mean, really quickly from like, oh, accidental like membership community because that's what people wanted. And then the timing was pandemic. And then you're watching like, okay, these trends and women aren't going to go back to work and they're going to need support and, and all these things like, okay, let's do a physical space. And then partly circumstantial, I guess, but you quickly moved into like the next trend, which I think a lot of people have not gotten to yet, which was okay, what's the experience in the space and what's going to make people want to hang out here, which is food and beverage. I mean, I love that as part of the workspace, which is like a heavy lift. I mean, again, you never run this business. You're like, okay, well, we're going to do co-working and food and beverage, like a full cafe, not just like a granola, a trail mix bar.
And,
And
like, that like, banquet catering, so
right,
everything from,
legit.
chicken
Yeah.
breast at lunch, and Karen did some 100-person seated, like, dinners. I mean, we were also down the street from the convention center in downtown Indy, so, like, when Gary Vee came to town and had VCon, like, we hosted the press breakfast.
Oh,
It just became this really great cohesive ecosystem of we've got this space and we've got the community and we've
yeah.
got the newsletter, and then using
Yep.
Indy Maven sort of as the marketing vehicle to bring the audience in. I think, what I couldn't predict was how downtown did not bounce back after the
Yep.
pandemic and still really has not. So it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that we were not going to stay in that building.
Yep.
There were definitely some parking constraints. People don't like to pay for parking. And it wasn't really expensive for downtown parking, but in Indiana, people want free parking. And so that was kind of all what went into, okay, the lease was ending. The landlord allowed us to extend while we were negotiating to move to a different location that was a little bit further north of downtown Indianapolis, a little bit more suburban, but also a great location, great area, and be in our own building with free parking that was away from the issues and challenges we were facing in the downtown location. And unfortunately, that fell through, but I still have the community and now running this membership and back to what I love really, which is like creating content and writing. We still do events. I just have to go find somewhere else to have them.
Right.
But the good news is we have lots of friends in town who kindly allow us to host event at their locations. So
Okay, I want to spend just a couple of minutes on what would have been the new location. And it almost, I mean, again, you had this opportunity to like experiment and figure out like what worked and didn't work. And then moving is a major undertaking. And you were going to design from scratch a new space that still blended fitness, cafe, event space, and then private offices, which was what you were missing in the first location.
yeah, it was a smaller building, I think just under 11,000 square feet, 2 stories. So the second level was going to be all private offices, conference room, and then the lower level, sort of a smaller version of what we had at the downtown location, smaller footprint, because our gym did get used and the showers did get used and the cafe did get used. So I got to see the stuff that worked and then but tweak it to make sense for us. So
Yeah. Yeah. I still think, I mean, you were like ahead of your time on pulling all of this together. And I still think it would have been a really compelling business model. I want to circle back because we didn't touch on this yet. You also had sponsorships.
oh yeah, right. Mhm.
Yeah. Which also, where did that sort of like ability come from? This,
So
I
yeah.
feel like this is the kind of thing everybody thinks they'll do in their co-working space. Most owners like don't have the like just don't know how to put it together or don't have the network or the vision for like what to offer. So yeah, I'd just love to hear like where did this come from and then what did it look like?
Well, I have this idea that in all my free time, I'm going to figure out how to package this or teach it
Okay,
and
great.
get this information with kind of working owners and operators because
Okay.
it it is valuable and it like really can make a difference on
Yeah.
your revenue. And it did for us. And yeah, it's not something everybody knows how to do, but it's something that you can learn and
Okay.
execute a lot easier than I think people think they can.
Hmm.
And it came from selling advertising and sponsorships for the media company. So when I was a journalist, that was an area that obviously we try and keep really separate. Like you don't really want sales with the journalist. But I came up through the media at a time where, especially at Indy Star under Gannett, they were starting to look at journalists as part of the brand, right? Not just they were putting our face on things. So I was in this like guinea pig group of making journalists into personalities. And so I got to sort of lift the veil behind what did sales look like and what was a sponsorship agreement and seeing how they put those things together. And of course, I didn't learn as much as I needed to, but I kind of just quickly figured the rest out when I launched Indy Maven. So taking that same concept, right? Putting a company's logo on a newsletter, there's no difference between you pay me money to do that or you pay me money to put it on the door of the event center. It's putting a logo up and saying, this is how many eyeballs are going to see it. And this is what I think that is worth. And we come to terms and we agree, and then we're all happy. So being able to also package sponsorships that included the digital and media marketing side of things with the physical space was really, I think, the most magic sauce, which is probably the hardest to recreate. But both of those things. I mean, but the other thing is like spaces we do often have newsletters and
Yep.
more assets than maybe even people realize
Hmm.
to monetize.
Yeah. I think it's like that what you said, the mindset of like, well, I'd seen it done before and this is how it worked. And I thought, well, why not? Wouldn't it translate? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we even had a sponsor for our, like, bathroom stalls. Like, we had a local
Oh my
plumbing
God.
that actually to this day, Hope Plumbing is an Indy Maven sponsor and
So
sponsored our stalls.
were your sponsors interested in the fact that it was a female focused membership or like, okay, for you?
Because
And to your point, like it sounds like if you think about helping others do this in the future, does it not necessarily a critical part, but for you, that's part of what you were like your value prop.
well, yeah, because women
Yeah.
control household spending.
Hmm.
Women control money. That really is what it comes down to. And so when that's kind of always my messaging with brands is
Yeah.
like, you want to get in front of the people who spend the money, then create content for women, create a good experience for women because they're typically the ones doing that. And then the return on that investment not only is just your ROI as an advertiser, but it's also like within your communities. There's, our entire community benefits when women are thriving, when they are
Yeah.
employed, when they can feed their
Yeah.
kids, when they get their kids into school, they donate more to charity. Women-led companies make more money. There's just like no situation where everybody doesn't win when women are thriving and in a beautiful space and feel
Yeah.
comfortable and catered to and
Yeah.
have the support they need. And then within that, you also get the actual community, right, of
Yeah.
women supporting each other, which was really powerful and a testament to what we had hoped we would see and did end up seeing by
Yeah.
putting all these cool women together in one space.
Wait, did you have any male members?
We had like a handful. My husband would
Okay.
be sometimes.
Nice. Okay. He was
We would
allowed.
get we would get a lot of like, "I'm here for a contract" kinda thing, and they were just like We had great guys who just would come in, or one guy, his son was in the ballet school across the street. And so he would just come in while his son was in like hours of
Yeah.
ballet. And yeah, and then we did actually also have a partnership with a program that was called Indy Biz Paths. And so it was 100 Black entrepreneurs that three different co-working spaces were all under one grant. And when we opened up to that program, that was a 2-year program, there were men in that program as well. And we loved them. They were great. They always cleaned up after themselves and made sure that they were extra mindful in the space in a
Nice.
way that I don't think they would have in another space.
Totally. That's so interesting. I love that. I want to ask you about your husband because, well, I got to meet him and we've worked together a little bit and I have seen your numbers, which is part of the reason I was like, we're going to talk to Leslie. And also, so interested in, your P&L just looks different than a lot of co-working space operators in a really positive way. The revenue streams that you added and the creativity with which, you sort of approach, and again, some of it was circumstantial in your background, which is why I love sharing these stories because I think like you come from this you have a view that you have on how this might how you approach the business that somebody else wouldn't have, like the sponsorship example is such a good one, and then you happened into this woman who was really comfortable with food and beverage, which is uncomfortable for a lot of people who are just trying to figure out how to manage the basic business model. But I think all these pieces are going to be important for the future of the co-working business and the experience.
And
So I
I've heard
love that
you talk
you're.
about, oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was just to say, I've heard you talk about that a lot
Yeah.
too lately with the idea of people leaning into their specialties. And it can be tricky with like a niche space.
Hmm.
Also, your thing better than anybody else, right? And so not trying to, it's so tempting in this industry to look at another space and go, I'm
Yep.
just going to copy that. But it doesn't work that way because
Totally.
your
It's not.
magic special spot sauce
Yeah.
that is not necessarily yours. Very
Yeah.
unlikely.
Yeah. And when you're an independent operator, and I also think we're just starting to get to the point where, I mean, even in Indianapolis, which is, I mean, it's not a small city.
The 14th
There are
largest.
the 14th, is that what you said?
Yeah, 14th.
It has a lot of co-working supply, much more than I maybe would have expected. And some of it's surrounding suburbs. Like when I was there visiting my friend in Carmel, I was like, and you have an Industrious, and there's
Yeah.
a Coach right here. And the serendipity, like all,
Mhm.
and now I'm, working on a project in Indy and doing some of the research. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of supply
Yeah.
here. And so I think we're at a point where you really do have to differentiate because there's a lot of supply that looks pretty similar. So I think we're really at that point. Well, I wanted to ask about your husband because when you were working on the new location, he would get on the calls and he was involved. And I just think, for other people listening who have partners who are like, I'm sorry, what are you doing? Like, I love that he was like, Leslie, you keep talking about this thing. I'm going to introduce you to like a realtor who can help you like go explore this. Like I mean, co-working, did he know what it was?
Yeah, so he
What?
works in tech. He
Okay.
was like a 6-time CMO, chief marketing officer in
Okay.
the tech space. So a lot of his employers, like over the years, he's worked
Had
out of
used.
co-working spaces
Mm.
a lot in New York, all around the world. And so, yes, he was a user and understood how they worked. And that was very helpful in this scenario. I think the first one, I'm very lucky to have a partner that's like, whatever makes you happy, sure, go for it. I think this time around with the new location, I wanted him more involved because I think he just kind of grew to like the business and really be interested in the business. And we did take out a significant personal loan. So now he had an even larger vested interest in this business. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that didn't feel like right, like copacetic. I wanted to make sure that we were like, okay, we both agree we're doing XYZ and keep him in the loop along the way. Because we didn't do the first time and it didn't backfire, but this was a 10-year commitment, a personal loan, versus the first one was a little less of a commitment and easier to digest, I think.
Yeah, totally. No, I love it. That yeah, you were kind of bringing him along, getting him engaged, but that he was, so supportive, which is great. Because I think sometimes our partners are even today, like, what is this business? What's happening? What
Yes.
what are we doing? So, yeah.
I mean, I think
Ok
he's disappointed it didn't go through
yeah.
as well, but I think we also both have seen I was still running 2 separate businesses even though they worked together. They were very different, and so for anyone who has done that before, that is a lot, and I have 2 little kids at home, so I think overall my stress level has lowered significantly, and we're all happier for
It's a
it.
little easier. Yeah. Okay, so you were still running the community that wasn't necessarily the physical Maven Space community, and now that's where your focus is. So yeah, tell us what that looks like.
The weekly newsletter, again, focused on women in Central Indiana, and it's free. It goes out every Thursday, but within that, we also have a paid membership program. And so with that membership program, we have a platform. We use Circle for our membership platform.
Mhm.
So we have the whole, private online community experience. And then we do in-person monthly meetups that tend to be focused more on personal development and just fun. And then we do monthly virtual lunch and learns, which focus on professional development. So just the same way that co-working spaces,
Yep.
we add in those lunch and learns and the meetups and the happy hours. It's kind of the same thing, except now we're not doing it in the same location each time, which we weren't in the beginning. And even when I did have Maven Space, we would still host them at other locations around town because part of the fun is getting to check out new places. So we're just back to doing that every month.
So it's specific to people who are local. It's not a national membership.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that will ever change?
Not while I'm doing it. I think there are like Kate Luzio has Luminary in New
Yes.
York, and that is a perfect example. And if somebody wanted an online experience for women, I was also part of the 10th house. Rebecca Minkoff and Allie Wyatt have that. So there are so many online platforms for women
Okay.
that do that
Mhm.
amazingly. And I like the idea that this is local. I think that, maybe regionally, just because the Midwest doesn't necessarily connect. But I ran into someone in an online, I don't even know where this digital community is from, not in this state. And I like
Mhm.
ran into someone in different circle community the other day who I just had met at an event I spoke at, and was like, what? This is such a small world. And like running into people from
Yeah.
online. So those spaces exist. I think I'll stay local for the
Yeah,
foreseeable.
no, I like it. It's like right, that's like your differentiator is that like people can actually meet in person without
Yeah,
having to get on a plane.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But it is like a digital, physical people could like you have an online community, so people might never go
Member
to
directory. Yeah.
yeah, people
But
could
also
get value out of it without showing up physically.
yep, yep. And we do the
Theoretically.
recordings and have, they can
Yeah.
plug in, see the lunch and learns. They can go ask for recommendations. Sort of like just a private Facebook group, but on
Mhm.
steroids and, without all the stuff we don't want to see on Facebook.
Right. I was gonna say, right, that's the advantage of Circle, and I know a lot of people like that for that reason, so you don't have to go in and yeah, to interact with your group and expose yourself to to everything that happens in Facebook. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so, like, for people listening who are thinking what are the advantage I don't know how to word this. I think the community piece is so interesting, like, the idea of having a membership. I don't think everybody is maybe equipped to do not equipped, we can all learn anything, growth mindset, but, like, I think there's an opportunity for a lot of people who are really passionate about the community piece to do it in addition to the physical space. So how did you talked about sort of doing both while you had the physical space. What did that look like?
Well, the online so there were people who were members of Indy Maven who did not care about the co-working space.
Yeah.
They maybe never even set foot in it.
Yep.
Maybe if they did, it was for an event, and that was about it, right? They very much enjoyed being a part of the membership community, and they just did not need a physical workspace. They weren't interested in coming downtown, whatever the reason may have been. We made it so that all of the co-working memberships came with an Indie Maven membership. So they then could choose to retain and stay in if they wanted
Okay.
when we closed. So again, there was like that overlap, but
Mhm. They're like adjacent, but not mutually exclusive. Or wait, they
You
could
didn't
be.
have to have
Yeah.
one be in
Yeah.
one in the other. You could if you wanted to. That was always hard to it's hard to even talk about, let alone just in messaging and getting people to wrap their brain around. And I oscillated what going, one day I was like, no, they're the same. And then they were different. And then they were
Yeah.
together. I was trying
Mm,
to find a way to make it simple and easy on me and everybody else. And in the end, I finally just was like, whatever, I don't care. Just show up to something. I'm not gonna, like pick hairs here. I don't care.
yeah.
Sometimes people would say, well, I thought I was part of the co-working space. It's fine. You're welcome. The point is we want you to show up and engage and be a part of the community. So I think that is a point of why community managers are also so important, right? Because if you are not that person that necessarily naturally people gravitate towards,
Yeah.
the community organizer, having someone who is that person. And, that's why having even I am I'm a host. I'm great. I can get people together. I'm good on that. But there were times where I was so drained. So having a Karen
Mhm.
or someone there who can step up and also have the energy, because it is a lot even for extroverts.
Totally. 100%. Do you find it less draining to do what you're doing now and not have the physical space where you're like physically interacting with people every day?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just yes. That's
Yeah.
it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think this model is super interesting because I think physical spaces are not the answer for everyone, right? Like yes, you had this temptation of like, well, I have this, community and this is what's happening in the world and you had this opportunity and it made sense. But I think there's a lot of overlap when you're passionate about the community piece. Does it need to require space? Or then if you want to transition out of the space, then is there an opportunity to keep it going digitally or to augment? Like, so you had a physical space and then you had some people who were part of this membership. And even if it was hard to, message and sort of figure out like who does what, like people didn't necessarily segmenting. They didn't have to be members of the space if they weren't, going to use it, but they could still be a part of the broader community. So I mean, to your point, like I run memberships also, like our community manager university programs, a membership. So diving into that sort of membership world and like, what does it take to run a successful membership and what are your, what are you offering? What are the deliverables? But there's a lot of like, interface with the co-working world that I think is really interesting for people to explore. So yours is an interesting example. I'm glad you shared it.
Yeah, thank you. The thing I would miss is the in-person element of the day-to-day seeing people, but with those in-person events, I'm still seeing
Kind of
people.
get yeah. Maybe you'll join someone else's co-working space.
Yeah, we have, and actually, there's a historic building. There's the Indianapolis Propylaeum, which is kind of where the women's club gathered historically, and it's this wonderful foundation and property. And we were going to use them as a temporary location in between
Mm,
spaces.
yeah,
But they kindly opened up to our community where it's just every Monday, any of our members can go work there. It's not a traditional, workspace, but it
yeah,
has internet and coffee, and it brings two really aligned missions together. So I, definitely think there's a case for having communities, but then also seeing where can you either share a space or partner or collab before,
yeah.
going and signing.
Mhm. Totally. A 10-year
Yeah.
lease for 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You've had quite a journey. Well, thank you for taking the time to share with us. I guess if somebody's in Indianapolis or nearby, so they could join your community, indymaven.com. Is that the website?
Yep. And I am lesliebailey.com. So I have started on the side doing some advising and consulting as
Oh,
well.
nice.
To
Okay, cool.
figure out how to, you know, share this weird wealth of knowledge and expertise, this
Yeah.
odd combination in my brain. And I'm having a lot of fun doing that too, which is something I wouldn't have had time for before.
Good. Everything happens for a reason. And we'll put the link in the show notes or the links plural in the show notes so that people can find you if they're interested. And thanks for sharing your journey.
Thank you for having me. I love chatting with you.
Totally. Well, it's good to catch up and
Yeah.
hear, where you're at today. Awesome. Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah.